Round one of the London Chess Classic 2016 took place today. I've just got back from the venue, and what a cracking first round it was. Without further ado, let me take you to the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. It's a very standard Grunfeld position. You can see going for a main line position where White sets up this big pawn centre, and Wesley hit out with e5. Now this has become quite a trendy move. Very often, this comes much later in Grunfeld. I commentated on a game in the summer with exactly this line between Peter Svidler and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in Biel. And there, Svidler took on e5, but in the end game, Maxime got a very nice initiative. Previously, there's also been a game between Anish Giri and Fabiano Caruana that went like this. Everything was traded on d4 and then bishop d7, followed by knight c6, but black was okay there. Today, Nakamura played, I think, the most uncompromising move, and that's to push on, giving White protected pass pawn. But now we've got a real imbalance in the position. Well, first of all, this pawn is attacked, so that got defended, and c4. And now here's the imbalance. Protected pass pawn, but black is able to strike out in typical King's Indian fashion, with the move f5. But of course there's no pawn on d6. But I mean, normally I would say positionally this would be very nice for White, but it's the fact that White hasn't castled yet, White has yet to develop, means this is very playable for black. So very dynamic opening from both sides. But both sides, well, Hikaru thought for 6 minutes over c4, but he shot out with bishop g5 pretty quickly. And if bishop f6, then h4, that seems fine for White. So knight f6 by Wesley. And now we've got a very interesting situation. White doesn't really want to take here. Big pawn centre. This could be a lot of fun. I was thinking bishop d3, and then if pawn takes, to drop the bishop back, and then try to recover this pawn with maybe knight to g3. But instead, Nakamura played knight e2 after just 25 seconds. This is one of the most extraordinary blunders I've ever seen. He must have just confused lines in his preparation or something, but anyway, I mean, it's very hard to explain this move because knight e4 is a very simple refutation. Obviously, there's a knight fork, so the queen has to be taken. Queen is taken here. If king takes, then rook takes. So bishop e7. Well, we can just move the rook. Bishop takes the pawn, and the knight takes the bishop. And here, well, Hikaru was thinking a long time over each move, trying to find some chances here. But, well, material is even for the moment, but in fact, White's position is absolutely rotten to the core, because black is just going to attack this pawn, and it's the fact that White's king is stuck in the centre. White can't connect the rooks easily. For example, king d2 will be met by rook c8, and this is absolutely hopeless. I mean, king d3 will, well, for example, will be met by e4 check, the c pawn drops. c5 is dreadful because, well, let me see, lots of reasons. But basically that d pawn is just going to drop, and this is the problem with the king in the middle. and all this terrible pin as well. So Hikaru played pawn to f4. He's trying to confuse the issue, but it really didn't help at all. And after this, he was simply a pawn down for nothing. Black has the two bishops. Wesley won in a few more moves. A terrible start to the tournament. Well, it was actually Hikaru Nakamura's birthday today, but he ended up giving a present to Wesley. So that was the first game to finish. Actually, that's not true. There was a draw between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Anish Giri, which finished before then. Actually quite a sharp game, but okay, I won't touch on that one. Aronian against Adams. Well, Michael Adams had a pretty good position, but he ran short of time and then it just went horribly wrong. Queen e5 check. Here's the crunch moment in the game with Adams running short of time. You can see Adams has a queen down here, but actually white isn't in danger because that bishop can block out. Here, short of time, Adams made a terrible mistake. He should play king a7 to keep the knight protected. And although black is a pawn down here, actually after this and rook c8, he's going to get enough play in this position. It's complicated, but black should be okay. Instead, Adams played king a8 and very simple refutation, exchange of rooks, and queen f6. Not the only move. Queen c7 also wins attacking rook and knight, and this simple double attack means that white wins the game. Adams tried to complicate, but there was nothing going on there. White wins that one. So Aronian wins. And we move on to the game between Vladimir Kramnik and Vasilina Topalov. There is no love lost between these two players since their World Championship match in 2006, with these terrible scandals, terrible accusations by Topalov claiming that Kramnik was cheating. And since then, they have had terrible relations. They do not shake hands before the game, which is a terrible breach of etiquette. They really don't like each other. But the great thing for chess fans is that they always have the most incredible fights. And recently, well, I don't know about recently, but the trend is definitely in Kramnik's favour. He has a good record against Topalov. And here, well, the opening has gone very well for Big Vlad. He has a beautiful position. All his pieces so actively placed. There's real harmony in his position. The queen has moved off the back rank. That means the rooks are connected. Now just compare that with black's position, where you can see the queen stuck on the back rank. And that breaks the coordination between the rooks. White has this space advantage. And now Vlad's played an excellent move, pawn to c6. So he's trying to break through and somehow inconvenience black's queen. And here, you know, the World Championship match has kind of spoiled us in a way, because both players, both Karyakin and Carlsen, defended so well. And when you see someone like Topalov in this game, who basically has a bit of a glass jaw, he's a real mood player. Sometimes plays absolutely brilliantly and can beat anybody. But if he's not on song, then yeah, he's got a glass jaw and his position shatters. And that's what happened here. He should take on c6 and just move the queen out to b7. And by the way, I should say, if the knight is taken, then knight d4, because of the pin, wins back the bishop, and that's crushing for white. But actually, queen b7, okay, it's very, very complicated, but probably not so bad for black. But Toppy played knight b6. And now knight e5 is a pretty strong move for white, but Vlad, he is such an ambitious player, and that's so typical for him. He just wanted to keep that pawn on c7, and he realizes if he can hold it, that could just win him the game. Let's see what happens. Knight c4, queen b4. Now that pawn can't be taken because the terrible pin here, and white is going to win that knight very easily. But knight takes bishop, queen takes b6, so material even, but that's an amazing pawn on c7. First I thought maybe black is okay here if he manages to get in queen b7 and rook c8, but it's all a question of time. In fact, knight e5 is a pretty strong move. I was analysing this position with Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Anish Giri after they'd finished their game, and they just thought that white had a fantastic position. We were messing about with some funny variations here. So, for example, okay, rook c8 looks like black might be getting somewhere, but now, well, in fact, the best move here is queen b3. We'll look at that in a second. Anish and Maxime wanted to take on f7, which looks like great fun. And we were looking at this variation. So check. Now the king can't go backwards because of knight e6 check. So if knight d5, now this is losing, and there's a beautiful move, knight b5. So exposing the knight to attack. And if e6, then obviously knight d6 wins a lot of lumps. Well, one big lump, the queen. And, well, if a6, now this is fun, takes on d5, and then rook f8, checkmate. Very nice. In fact, this variation isn't sound. Coming back after queen b3, black can play e6, and black is just about hanging on there. Anyway, some fun variations. But in this position, if white is just a little more careful, queen b3 for example, hitting f7, and then knight b5, this is an absolutely tremendous position for white. Should be winning. So knight e5 was what the move we were expecting, but Vlad played queen a3, slightly mysterious move. Well, of course, he's bringing the queen away from the bishop's diagonal. Okay, I get that. But he's also looking at e7. He's looking down here and maybe looking in this direction, but it's a slightly mysterious move. But I think it's just basically to get off this diagonal and keep the queen active. And now, queen b7 is certainly a better move. I think white has a tremendous position. This is actually a very interesting move, bishop h3, and to try and tempt this pawn forward, and then you can use the d6 square. But Topi should have tried it. He went for e6, but after knight b5, this is tremendous for white. So obviously the knight wants to come in. Bishop f8, queen back to b2, hitting the knight. Bishop defends. Now, very interesting, knight d6 is probably a good move for white. Now, it gets rather complicated after knight e4, hitting this, but, well, trust me, should be good for white. But instead of that, Vlad didn't want to kind of grab at the first bit of material that came his way. Very coolly, he just played queen d2. Obviously has such enormous faith in his position, he feels he can hold it, and of course his judgment was absolutely spot on. So, knight d6 threatened, therefore queen d7 to defend, hitting the knight, and now a4 defending, and, well, if a6, then this knight comes into e5, this is dreadful for black. So knight e4, hitting the queen. Remember, white hasn't sacrificed any material to get this amazing position with the pawn on c7. And now queen f4, that's where the queen is heading. Supporting the pawn, looking at f7, looking at the knight here. This is a winning position for white. a6 tried, but then simply queen takes knight. Because if bishop takes, then rook takes queen, and white has this extra c-pawn, and that is definitely winning. So in this position, pawn takes. Now the queen came back. Very, very simple. Threatening e4, pin and win. So that's why Toppy played f5. And now a very nice winning move, knight g5. Really simple. And the basic idea is, well, against almost anything, white is going to play knight takes e6 and completely destroy black. For example, pawn takes pawn, knight e6. Let's take this, take on d7. This is threatened, the rook is threatened. If rook c8, bishop b7. So you're threatening to take and then play rook d8 here. And then rook c6. I mean, this is completely crushing white. White wins. You can pick up the pawns, you can pick up material. Completely winning for white. To me, so after knight g5, Toppy resigned. There really is no defence there at all. For me, that was a classic Kramnik victory. The way he powers through the middle of the board. You see it so often when he uses a d pawn to power through the board. It happened to be a c pawn this time, but somehow what he loves best. Absolutely typical for him. So there we go. A fantastic round one. And I think it's going to be a cracking tournament.